by Theravada Buddhist monks
ที่ประชุมในครั้งนี้นะคะมีพระที่มาจากเทรวาดา
who preserve and follow the Pali tradition. So Tibet, China, Mongolia, and through China, Buddhism spreads to Japan, Korea, Vietnam. So these countries follow Sanskrit tradition. Regarding Vinaya, in China it seems there were different sects like Dharmagupta and others. Whereas in Tibet we follow the Mulasarvastivada tradition of Vinaya, which was brought to Tibet, spread in Tibet by the great abbot Chandarakshita. So after the Buddha passed away, there were 18 different sects of Vinaya, and there were slight differences amongst them, and mainly there were 4 main sects. And so one of them was Mulasarvastivada, which Tibetans follow now. So after he became enlightened, the Buddha ordained monks by saying the monks' robes should be worn in a spherical or cylindrical fashion. And so the Buddha, right before his passing away, said that after I'm gone, your master will be this Vinaya, the Pratimoksha Sutra. And so he is referring to the Pratimoksha Sutra. So regarding Buddhism, the foundation of Buddha Dharma is that of Vinaya, the monastic discipline. And when the Buddha Dharma is meant for attaining liberation, nirvana. In order to reach that goal, you need to overcome all our delusions. And therefore, of the three trainings, the Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna is the most important factor to reach enlightenment. So even if you may be able to meditate and cultivate single-pointed concentration for a while, what you need to do is to try to develop a very powerful single-pointed concentration. So without that, you will not be able to develop the prajna, the wisdom. And in order to develop the samadhi, you need to have the moral discipline. And so within the practice of morality, you have the practices of mindfulness and introspection. And so the Buddha himself has said that sages or munis do not wash away the sins of beings, nor do they remove the suffering of beings with their hands, nor do they transfer their own realizations into others, but only by teaching the truth will the sage help the beings to liberation. So, even at that time, 2,600 plus years ago, the Buddha has actually left the responsibility on our shoulders. So the Buddha went through the cultivation of the two collections of merit and wisdom. So how do the Buddha help sentient beings? not by removing their suffering with his hands, not by washing their unwholesome actions or akushala karmas, nor by transferring their realizations into others. And so how the Buddha helps us is by relating and sharing his own experience of having gone through the process of learning, meditation, and contemplation, and reflection and meditation. And so the Buddha himself has said that where there is the triple practice of Vinaya, the Buddha would be free from any worries. And so this is what the monastic institution, the monastics practice. Therefore, Vinaya, practitioners of Vinaya are the foundation, are practicing the foundation of the Buddha Dharma. So without this foundation, even if someone may have some kind of a miracle power to fly across the sky and so forth, it doesn't really help to preserve the Buddha Dharma well. And therefore, it is very important to observe the Vinaya rules. And so within the teaching of the Buddha, there are those teachings which are meant for general structure or teachings, and there are very specified teachings tailored for specific disciples, which are taught in the Tantric scriptures, the latter ones. Whereas the teachings like the Four Noble Truths are not for specifically, for specific disciples. These are common teachings. Whereas in Tantra, there are many different deity yoga practices according to the dispositions, mental dispositions of the practitioners. So, for some practitioners of Tantra, the Buddha appeared in certain deity form which are more suitable to those practitioners. And in the highest yoga tantra, there is practice of using practices whereby you use the internal energies, the bindus and chakras, channels and so forth. So according to the different followers or practitioners, the Buddha gave different practices, such as the Vajra recitation, where the practitioners do this Vajra recitation using 2 syllables or 3 syllables and so forth. And then there are other techniques whereby the practitioners actually focus on the vital points within the body. So of course these are very profound teachings, but the important thing to understand is we need to have the foundational teachings as the basis for these higher and more advanced teachings, without which these higher teachings will not be effective. And so the general structure of the Buddha Dharma comprise of Vinaya, of the 3 trainings or the Tripitaka. We have the Vinaya as the foundation, and therefore the monastic discipline, the code of monastic discipline is very important in the general structure teaching of the Buddha. So in Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Sri Lanka, you have very good practice of Vinaya, and Vinaya is something which is shared with us, our tradition as well. And so our Pratimoksha Sutra is in Sanskrit, and then there are commentaries to the Pratimoksha Sutra by Buddha, written by those of the masters like Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha in the Mula Sarvastivada tradition. So the Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya Sutras are in Sanskrit, And so there are those of the different numbers of the Vinayas rules, such as the 4 defeats, 13 remainders, and 30 misdeeds, and so forth. Whereas in Pali tradition, and the mere misdeeds in Pali are 92, and then there is another set which is of certain number. So when I did some research, in Pali there's mention of how to wear the monastic robe, where it says only one point, whereas in the Mula Sarvastivada there are 7 points mentioned. So the mere misdeeds, there are very minor differences. So in one of these rules, there are 7 points mentioned with regard to how to wear the lower garment, not to wear it too tight or too low and too high and so forth. Whereas in Pali, it is said the monastic robe should be worn properly. Just 1 point. So, based on the Patimokkha Sutra, we have the monastic rules practice of in the Mulasarvastivada Patimokkha vow and Theravada Patimokkha vow, there are few differences, minor differences, but the major ones are all same. So here we are gathered for discussion on Vinaya, which is a shared practice. It is very important to have this discussion. So, the Thai, in this Vatpa, Thai Vatpa, we have the Vinaya masters or holders of Vinaya tradition from the Theravada tradition, and also the Tibetan Mulasarvastivada, followers of the Mulasarvastivada tradition. So with regards to Vinaya, there are practices as points such as how one is ordained, and then how to observe the precepts and rules, and then if you the monks break the rules, how to actually purify them, rectify them, and so forth. So right from the beginning of taking the vows, if you could discuss on these points, it would be good. And then if there are more time, then you could also discuss on samadhi, single-pointed concentration, how to cultivate it. For example, you could discuss on the samadhis in pertaining to the rupa dhatu and arupa dhatu and so forth. So with regard to the 3 shiksha, the ethics, concentration and wisdom, it is also something shared with the non-Buddhist traditions. But the difference lies mainly in the cultivation of wisdom, the prajna. So the non-Buddhist tradition of non-Buddhist practice of the 3 trainings are based on their assertion of an independent self, Atman. And within their practice, what they actually see is the higher realms of existence within samsara as more peaceful compared to the kama dhatu, which is considered more gross, and so forth. And so accordingly, they go about with the cultivation of samadhi, of higher planes of existence within this samsara. Whereas in Buddhism, we have the understanding of anatta or anatman theory. And on that, regarding that, there are the 4 schools of philosophy: Vaibhashikas, Sautrantikas, Chittamatra, and Madhyamakas. And so the Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas reject any kind of an independent, permanent self, which is substantial and so forth. So this is rejected. So with regard to an independent, permanent, single, autonomous self, this they reject. And then there is also a view of self which is seen as the ruler over the 5 skandhas. So the skandhas, the 5 skandhas are viewed as if they are like servant to the self. So we have this kind of a notion that there is a self which rules over these 5 skandhas. So there is a view of the master and the servants regarding this the self and the skandhas. And so the Vaibhashikas and Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas reject such a self. And then the Chittamatras and Madhyamakas also delve into that of the skandhas themselves. And so in the Chittamatra and Vaibhashikas, the Madhyamakas, they delve into the 5 skandhas, and then they come up with the understanding that things do not exist the way they appear to us. So appearance is not the reality, and therefore not only do they talk about selflessness of persons, but also the selflessness of phenomena. And there are differences in their interpretations and understanding as well. So with regard to this, with regard to the selflessness of persons, the Chittamatras refer to it as the non-duality of the subject and object. And they say that things do not have any external existence, but they appear as a reflection of the imprints left on our mind from the past. And therefore, the object and subject of mind are non-dual. And when you understand that well, of course, it will help to overcome our attachment to objects. Because they say that these things which seem to be external are mere reflections of the imprint on your mind. And so quantum physicists also say that there is no objective existence in things. When you dissect things into their parts and so forth, then to their smaller parts, then nothing can be pointed to as being this and that. And so, just as the Chittamatrans, the mind-only school, do this kind of scrutiny, likewise the quantum physicists also say that things have no objective existence through that kind of analysis. Whereas the Madhyamakas, the middle way school, say that Though the Chittamatras say that things have no external existence, but then still they hold on to the view that the subjective mind has its own reality. And when we talk about pain and pleasure, it actually has to do with the internal experience, and therefore, just by saying that things have no external existence cannot do away with this kind of a grasping at a reality of the mind itself. And therefore the Madhyamakas, the middle way school, say that things have no true existence. And so we need to really go into details to understand the subtlety of what they reject as they establish emptiness or selflessness. So the Madhyamakas say that things appear as if they have some kind of a true independent existence, and therefore they say whether it's external phenomena or internal experience, nothing has any true existence. But that doesn't mean things have no existence at all. It's not nihilism, but that things do not exist independently. And this helps to combat our grasping at some kind of independent existence in things outside or internal experiences. And having said that things have no independent existence, how do they exist then, if you ask? Then the Madhyamakas say that they are merely designated. And so if you have more time, you could also have discussions on these points as well. We don't need only to say that such and such is true because the Buddha said so. Not only saying that, but masters of Nalanda, such as Master Nagarjuna and so forth, have done great analysis into the teaching of the Buddha himself. So the Buddha himself has, the masters of Nalanda did that because the Buddha himself has said, O monks and scholars, just as gold is tested by rubbing, burning, cutting and polishing, likewise you should examine my teaching and accept it, not because you have faith or devotion in me. So accordingly, the Nalanda masters have actually investigated into the teaching of the Buddha. In the Prajnaparamita Sutras, the Buddha said that nothing has any essential identity in and of itself. And therefore, those who were not able to understand that fully, for them the Buddha was said to have given teaching of the Sandhi Nimochana Sutra. And so, in the Sandhi Nimochana Sutra, it interprets the Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom, teachings. So both were taught by the Buddha, but what you need to do is logical analysis into the teachings. Not only say that we should accept this and that, both, because they were said by the Buddha, not saying that. But when it comes to talking about emptiness, emptiness doesn't mean that things cannot be found when analyzed, but emptiness means dependent origination. So the profound explanation of these 2 points is made by Master Nagarjuna, where he says in his Mulla Madhyamaka Karika, what arises through dependence is said to be empty, and that is itself designation, and that is the middle way. Since there is nothing which is not dependently originated, therefore there is nothing that is not empty. And so we need to resort to logical reasoning to understand the teaching of the Buddha well. And so even today, the scientists, what they do is analyze the nature to try to find truth. And Buddhism also uses, in the Nalanda tradition particularly, we use logic and reasoning. And therefore, even the scientists admire this understanding of the dependent origination, and which has found some kind of a seed amongst the sciences. So even the Buddha, when we analyze him, cannot be found within the aggregates. And so, Master Nagarjuna's verse where he says that the Tathagata is neither one with the aggregates nor separate from it, neither is he in the aggregates nor are the aggregates in him, and neither the Tathagata possesses the aggregates. So what is Tathagata? So this could be applied to ourselves in order to be able to destroy any and all objectification that we have. And Master Nagarjuna also says that ending karma and delusions, there is nirvana. And karma and delusion arise from our mental constructs, and which are in turn rooted in the grasping at some independent true existence. And this grasping is ended or by emptiness. And so if you apply these teachings within yourselves and give thought to them and feel convinced about these teachings, it really helps to fight our negative, destructive emotions. And so ignorance is the fundamental thing that we need to overcome. As Aryadeva also says. So ignorance is a factor which permeates all other delusions, such as attachment, anger, hatred, and so forth. Like the physical faculty, the bodily faculty permeates all other faculties, like eye, sense, organ, and so forth. Likewise, and ignorance is like that. And therefore, Aryadeva says that it should be overcome through the understanding of dependent nature of things. And therefore, one should find conviction in the teaching of the Buddha regarding this emptiness and selflessness. And so if you could discuss on the three shiksha, the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom, it would be good.
So now, recently we also used to start exchange. Some Thai Buddhist monk come to Dharamsala, carry study, and some Tibetan also used to went there, study. So that is important. I think we are, Theravada tradition, Pali tradition, the Vinaya practice is the foundation. The so-called Tibetan Buddhism, some people say Mahayana and Tantriana. And then finally, Lamaism. Totally wrong. I think with Tibetan also, you see, they don't generally, I think people not much pay attention for study. Just follow one individual Lama on high throne and with wife, with wine, some people say, oh, great Lama, great Lama. Oh, so that, you see, creates the basis of Lamaism. True Tibetan Buddhist tradition is a Nalanda tradition. All those Nalanda masters, Nagarjuna, Aryandewa, Buddhapolida, Arya Asanga, Busuband, and Dignak, Dharmakirti, all these monk, all are monk. And then Saraha and some the yogis also, you see, they in our lineage. But they, Naroba, these originally, and Birwaba, originally student of Nalanda. They study at Nalanda. Then some of them, I think they really, you see, they develop triple experiences that they just, you see, so carry their life in, in forest or some remote area, and then they enjoy more freedom. So that's the individual case. So when we say Buddha Dharma, then Vinaya is the foundation, very important. Okay. So I'm very happy now having this sort of opportunity to further detailed discussion and exchange. Very good. Thank you.